Hello everyone, welcome to The Captivating Christian. I am your host, Chris T. Ian, and I am rocking my favorite Christian YouTubers merch. And I'm Adam Sykes of the Blockbusters Show, and today we're going to be doing a collab, crossover, whatever people call these kind of videos. We're going to be talking about Evan Almighty together.
God is my guy. I'm rolling with my ninja Jesus Christ. Satan can suck on my cock tonight. Some yellow nigga just burned my rice. Let's go, Jesus! God is my guy. I'm rolling with my ninja Jesus Christ. Satan can suck on my cock tonight. Some yellow nigga just burned my rice. Let's go, Jesus!
What exactly is Evan Almighty? Well, Evan Almighty is a PureFlix film from their South Korea division about the rise of the Christian religion in more Eastern countries, and it's directed by a young man by the name of Mong Dal. Yeah, Chris, I'm just gonna take a shot in the dark here and say that I don't think that's what the movie's about. Alright, IMDb, help us out here. Okay, so from what I can gather, according to IMDb, the movie was originally intended to be a straightforward sequel called The Second Coming of Bruce, and was intended to have Jim Carrey, but Jim Carrey, in his grand tradition of not wanting to do sequels around this time, said that he didn't want to do it. Another thing they did was they bought a completely different script for a different religious-themed comedy called Passion of the Ark. Universal bought the script, and then with a couple of rewrites they were able to rework it into having the original characters from Bruce Almighty, namely Steve Carell's character of Evan and Morgan Freeman as God, and boom, that's how you get Evan Almighty. This film takes place after the events of Bruce Almighty, and we see Evan Baxter, played by Steve Carell, and his family as they move because Evan got promoted from being a news anchor to being a congressman. It's almost like they took the character of Evan Baxter from the first movie and they just completely rewrote him so that now, instead of being a douchey rival to Jim Carrey's character, now he's some kind of kind-hearted family guy who's just trying to do the right thing. His family is a lot more religious than he is, so over the course of the film we see him gradually become more and more religious, as the main plot of the film consists of him being asked by God, played by Morgan Freeman, to build an ark because there is going to be a flood.
I'm God.
Yeah.
And I want you, Evan Baxter, to build an ark.
Before someone sparks a debate up in the comments section, the flood is actually not sent by God, because in the Bible it says that God is not going to flood the earth ever again, but rather the flood actually comes from a broken dam that was set up by some corrupt politicians, specifically Congressman John Goodman, who starts off as Evan's boss but gradually becomes the main antagonist of this film. I also love that Congressman John Goodman is just your typical generic evil businessman that wants to wipe out the environment. It's like they took a religious comedy and then they mixed in some kind of message about environmentalism. It's like you got two different groups and put them together into one movie. Another thing that happens is gradually throughout the film, we see Evan go from regular, clean-cut Steve Carell to gradually becoming more and more like Noah. Like, he starts growing out a beard and everything, and he eventually has to start wearing robes. His hair goes from darkish, blackish brown to more gray, and eventually white.
Ah, you gotta go shave. I can't shave. Whenever I shave, the beard grows right back in. That's what happens when you shave. But then you shave again.
There are several comedic set pieces in this film, like when God keeps appearing to him and appearing as various different people all around him, and he starts to freak out.
Ah! Ah!
Let it out, son.
The humor in this movie. Most of it consists of them doing like plays on religious stuff, like, you know, they have a bit where everywhere Evan looks, he sees 6:14, which is a Bible verse, and if anything, that just felt like they were trying to recreate another Jim Carrey movie. It feels like they were trying to recreate the number 23, but instead it was 6:14. And there's also a scene where a bunch of animals are just following him around because God is sending 2 of every animal to be put onto this ark. You could definitely tell this came out when Steve Carell was still relevant. I mean, they even make a reference to 40-Year-Old Virgin with a movie markup that says, the 40-Year-Old Virgin Mary. Everybody in the cast, I think the only person that works somewhat well is Wanda Sykes, surprisingly, because every so often she can make me laugh in movies, and here this was no exception, but every so often it also felt like she was just kind of running her Wanda Sykes shtick into the ground.
Steven, what happened? Did you fall in a mine shaft? Did you just come out of a coma?
No.
Were you attacked by a werewolf?
Probably Probably the best scene in this film is actually when the flood happens, because a lot of the effects and a lot of the budget of this film went into that sequence, and I think they did a very good job with that whole scene. It is easily the most blockbuster, because he's right there, scene in the film. It definitely would have been great to see this on the silver screen, because that whole scene was just amazingly put together. It was just very epic.
Okay, this is epic.
So the movie ends with Steve Carell finally living up to his parental potential, and he starts spending more time with his family like he promised at the beginning, but sadly couldn't do because of his job. And now he's spending more time with his family, and we get the message of the film that God wants all of us to do an arc, an act of random kindness. Oh, and it also ends with everyone doing a great big dance party set to Everybody Dance Now. Two main people from the first movie that come back. I think Morgan Freeman still plays exactly the same character, and that's totally fine. He was probably the most consistent person in the whole movie. He was basically playing the same God character from the first one, and he played it with all the same kind of conviction as he did in the first. Steve Carell is not a terrible leading man, but it's just weird because, again, you take a character who was kind of a minor antagonist for the most part until his redemption at the end. And then you just make him the main character. Why? Because, audiences like Steve Carell. Steve Carell was big at the time when they made this. And, he was the only person that would come back because Jim Carrey did not want to do a second one. But, I mean, for what he did, he was fine. It's just that Steve Carell, I don't know. For some reason, Steve Carell will always be good at playing Michael Scott, and that's it. Overall, I thought this film was mostly enjoyable. I feel like they probably could have ramped up the religious overtones just a little bit more, like something like maybe Pure Flix level, but that's just me. Overall, I think this is a very entertaining little film. I feel like you don't even have to be that religious to get into this movie, because most of the humor itself is pretty endearing and charming. Most of the actors do a very good job. The arc scene is definitely worth the price of admission for the ending of the film. I feel like overall this is a very enjoyable little film. Not great, but I would give it about a 6 or 6.5 out of 10. It's not great, but it's definitely an enjoyable little family film. Okay, well, I didn't like it as much as Chris did. However, I did think that out of all the Jim Carrey-less sequel, spin-off, prequel, remake, whatever, the things that we're going to be looking at, this is probably the best one, simply because they actually did have people returning from the first one. Not just in the cast, but also the same director, Tom Shadyac. I think that it was probably the most consistent of these movies we're going to be looking at, because it did kind of have the same tone, except this one I felt they were trying to hammer a more religious tone into, even more than the first one. And it's not like this is some obnoxious, preachy Pure Flix movie or something like that. Whoa, hey, whoa, let's not say things we'll regret. Hey, you had your time to speak. There's better family movies out there, but I'm just saying in terms of family movies that you're trying to find something quick, and if it's available, it's not going to be a painful sit. Compared to what I'm going to be looking at next time on the Blockbuster Show, which is, we're going to be starting with Ace Ventura Jr. The only straight-to-video one out of all three of the movies. We're starting with the one that went straight to video, and we're starting off on the wrong foot with Ace Ventura Jr. While he's doing a video on that, I'm going to be doing a video on a small independent film called Sunday School Musical. Oh, dude, ew, you're doing Sunday School Musical? Yeah, and I remember you did a video on it a long time ago with Swigga and Julia and all those guys. Out of curiosity, would you be interested in doing a collab on that? I already did a video on that. I am not sitting through that again. If anything, Get Media was to help you with that. Screw that, man. I'm out. All right, well then. I'm Christy Ian, host of The Captivating Christian, and remember, like Morgan Freeman said, thou shalt do the dance, and may Jesus be with you.